Welcome to our deep dive into personal construct psychology. We've got some really cool excerpts here from the International Handbook of Personal Construct Psychology, edited by Faye Francella. And it looks like you're really interested in how all this theory can actually be applied in real-world situations.
Definitely. But to really understand those applications, we need to start with the core concepts. It's kind of like learning a new language.
Yeah.
Got to get the basic grammar down before you can, start writing poetry.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. So where do we begin with the grammar of this personal construct psychology thing? The excerpts mention something called man the scientist. So does that mean like we should all start wearing lab coats?
Haha, not necessarily. It's more about the way we think. It's more about the approach. Like personal construct psychology suggests that we all approach life kind of like scientists. We form theories about ourselves, about the world around us, test those theories out through our experiences, and then we revise them based on, what we learn.
So it's less about finding one, like, definitive right answer and more about constantly refining our understanding just based on, like, what we experience, what we live.
Exactly. It's very dynamic, very fluid, and that's where personal constructs come in. These are basically the unique lenses that each of us uses to see the world through.
Okay, so could you maybe give me an example of how these lenses actually work in practice?
Sure. Let's say there are two people looking at the same painting. One person might see beauty, tranquility, while the other person might see chaos and confusion.
Right. And it's their personal constructs shaped by their past experiences, their values, their beliefs that influence how they interpret that same painting.
That makes sense. But wouldn't that then lead to, like, a super subjective view of reality? Like, if everyone's interpretation is valid based on their own constructs, then how can we even agree on, like, anything? That's a really good question. And it kind of gets to the heart of one of personal construct psychology's key principles, which is called constructive alternativism.
Mm.
So this principle acknowledges that there are multiple ways of seeing the same thing, right? And each of those perspectives can offer valuable insights. So it's not about saying like everything is totally relative, but rather that reality is complex, our understanding is constantly evolving.
So it's encouraging us to be more open-minded, more curious about other people's viewpoints,
Yeah.
even if they totally clash with our own.
Exactly. And to recognize that our own constructs aren't set in stone either. They can be challenged, they can be expanded, they can even be completely transformed, sometimes through new experiences and interactions with others.
This is really making me think about how my own constructs are shaping my view of the world. Now, the excerpts also mention the role of emotions. Is this just a cognitive theory, or do feelings like actually play a part too?
Emotions are absolutely central to personal construct psychology. Kelly saw them as signals. They actually provide us with valuable feedback about our own construct system.
So emotions aren't just like random feelings, they're actually directly linked to our own personal constructs. So how does that work?
Well, think about anxiety, for example. If you're feeling anxious, it might be because a core construct is being challenged, like your sense of control, for instance. Or maybe, like you mentioned before, your construct of fairness is being violated, and you're feeling angry because of it.
This is making me see emotions in a whole new light. It's like
Uh-huh.
you're giving me clues about my own like inner world. But then how do we go about like actually deciphering those clues?
Well, that's where some of the techniques and tools of personal construct psychology come into play. One example that your excerpts mentioned is the repertory grid.
Ah, yes, the repertory grid. I was hoping we'd get to that. From what I understand, it's something that's used in therapy. Can you maybe tell me more about how it works and what kind of insights it provides?
Yeah, sure. It's actually more versatile than you might think. Yeah, it is used in therapy, but it can also be applied to other areas like education, business, even personal development. Essentially, what it does is it helps you map out your personal constructs and then see how they all relate to each other. It's like creating a visual representation of your own unique way of understanding the world.
That sounds really fascinating. So how does it actually work in practice? Like, what does the process actually look like?
Well, it usually involves identifying key elements in a particular domain, and these could be people, events, ideas, really anything that's relevant to the topic that you're exploring. And then you compare and contrast these elements to try to uncover the constructs that you use to make sense of them. So, for example, if we were looking at like your career, we might compare different jobs you've had or jobs you've considered and try to see what constructs are driving those career decisions.
Oh, I see. I'm starting to see how this could be really valuable, not just in therapy, but in all sorts of situations. It's like having this tool to map out your own internal compass in a way.
You got it. Yeah, it gives you a deeper understanding of your own thought processes, your motivations, and even maybe some potential blind spots.
This is all incredibly intriguing. But you mentioned that personal construct psychology isn't just a theoretical framework, right? It actually has real-world applications. The excerpts highlighted its use in psychotherapy. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So personal construct therapy is not about the therapist telling you what to do or giving you like direct advice. It's more about helping you explore your own unique way of seeing the world and finding ways to make that view work better for you.
So it's more about empowerment than instruction. Like it's helping the individual to become their own scientist, in a way, navigating their life.
Exactly. The therapist acts as more of a facilitator. They're helping the client to uncover their own constructs, understand how those constructs are shaping their experiences, and then explore alternative ways of construing those experiences.
So this is so different from the traditional view of therapy where the therapist is seen as the expert with all the answers, right?
Yes, definitely. Personal construct therapy really puts the emphasis on the individual's own capacity for growth and change. So the therapist is more of a guide, helping the client to, discover their own path.
I really like that.
Yeah.
This is really resonating with me. I'm already starting to see how this approach could be really empowering for people who are struggling.
Yeah, it can be truly transformative. And the beauty of personal construct psychology is that it's not limited to therapy. Its principles can actually be applied to like a wide range of fields and situations.
And that's what I'm finding so fascinating about it. Yeah, it seems incredibly versatile. In the next part of our deep dive, I'd love to explore some of those other applications.
Yeah, I'm happy to dive into those with you. We'll look at how personal construct psychology can be used to make learning more effective, improve communication, and even foster more understanding between different cultures.
All right, so we've kind of laid some groundwork, explored that idea of man the scientist,
Yeah.
and how our personal constructs kind of shape the reality that we experience. So what other fascinating areas does personal construct psychology help to shed light on?
Well, you mentioned the versatility of this theory, so why don't we dive into education? One of the excerpts you provided talked about how understanding personal constructs can really revolutionize how we approach teaching and learning.
I'm all ears. How can understanding these unique lenses actually enhance the educational experience?
Well, imagine like a classroom where you have a student who's really struggling with math. Instead of just, slapping a label on them like bad at math, a teacher who understands personal construct psychology might try to explore the student's constructs around numbers, around math itself.
Yeah, that's a much more compassionate approach for sure. But how would that exploration actually look in practice?
Well, the teacher could use conversation, maybe even some drawing exercises, to help uncover those constructs. Maybe the student sees math as really rigid, rule-bound, and like it's stifling their creativity. So by understanding this, the teacher can then reframe math, present it as, this tool for problem solving, for exploration, which could make it way more engaging for the student.
Wow, that's a huge shift in perspective. It's like translating math into the student's own language almost.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And it's not just about individual students, right? Personal construct psychology can also be used to understand group dynamics, something that I think you were curious about earlier.
Right. We did briefly touch on that, yeah.
Yeah.
But I would love to kind of go a little bit deeper. So how does personal construct psychology actually apply to understanding how teams and organizations function?
Think about it this way. Just like individuals have their own personal constructs, groups can develop shared construct systems. And these shared systems end up influencing how the members interact, how they make decisions, how they approach challenges.
Oh, interesting. So it's like each group develops its own kind of unique culture based on the collective lenses of its members.
That's a great analogy. And understanding these shared constructs can be super valuable for promoting teamwork, resolving conflicts, even navigating organizational change.
Can you give me a real world example of how this might actually play out?
Sure. Let's say there's a team that's constantly butting heads and they just can't seem to move forward on a project, right? A consultant or a leader who understands personal construct psychology wouldn't just try to mediate the conflict directly. Instead, they might facilitate a discussion to try to uncover those underlying constructs that are driving that tension.
It's interesting. So instead of just focusing on those surface level symptoms, they're actually going deeper, right? Trying to understand the root cause of that conflict.
Exactly. They might ask questions like, what does success actually look like for this project? How do we define effective communication?
Yeah.
And by kind of surfacing those shared constructs, the team can start to see things from each other's perspectives and then hopefully, come up with solutions that work for everyone.
It's like holding up a mirror to the group, right?
Yeah.
Helping them see their own collective blind spots.
Hmm.
And I imagine this could even be applied to organizations as a whole, not just individual teams.
Absolutely. Organizational culture is basically a massive shared construct system. So understanding it through this lens can be super important for everything. Leadership development, strategic planning, diversity and inclusion efforts, you name it.
Yeah, it seems like personal construct psychology offers this framework for creating more conscious and intentional organizations, like ones that are really aligned with their values and their goals.
Totally. And that's what's so cool about it. It's not just about understanding the present, it's also about shaping the future.
Speaking of the future, we briefly touched on cross-cultural communication earlier, and given how interconnected our world is, I feel like this is an area where personal construct psychology could be so valuable. So how can it help us, navigate all those complexities that come with intercultural interactions?
Well, I think it starts with acknowledging that people from different cultures often have very, very different construct systems, right? Our constructs are deeply shaped by our upbringing, our values, and even the language we speak. So
Right.
when you're interacting with someone from another culture, it's not just about learning their language, it's about understanding their unique way of seeing the world, too.
Yeah, that's such a crucial point. It's about going beyond that superficial understanding and actually recognizing those deeper cultural lenses that are shaping people's perspectives. So how can we like practically apply this insight, this awareness to improve cross-cultural communication?
Yeah. One way is to really approach those interactions with genuine curiosity. Instead of assuming that your way of seeing things is the right way, try to understand the other person's constructs. Ask questions, really listen attentively, and be open to the possibility that their perspective might challenge your own.
It sounds like it requires this willingness to kind of step outside of our comfort zones and actually embrace that discomfort of not knowing.
You got it. But the rewards can be huge, can be profound. By understanding and respecting different cultural lenses, we can actually build bridges of understanding, resolve conflicts way more effectively, and create more inclusive and welcoming environments.
This is so insightful. It makes me wonder about those situations where cross-cultural understanding is especially critical, like in international relations. So does personal construct psychology offer any kind of guidance when it comes to navigating those complex dynamics?
Absolutely. Actually, one of your excerpts touches on the application of personal construct psychology to international relations. At its core, diplomacy and international relations are all about understanding perspectives, motivations, and intentions. And personal construct psychology really offers a framework for doing exactly that.
Oh, I see. So instead of just analyzing those political structures and economic forces, we should also be looking at how different nations and cultures are construing each other's actions.
Exactly. For example, a gesture or even a policy that might seem totally threatening to one country could be interpreted as a sign of respect in another. So by understanding those differing controls, we can avoid misunderstandings, de-escalate conflicts, and hopefully find common ground.
That's such a valuable lens for navigating this complex, globalized world that we live in, and it really highlights the importance of empathy and perspective taking on a global scale.
Yeah, for sure. And it reminds us that even in the realm of international relations, it's ultimately individuals with their own unique constructs who are making those decisions and shaping the course of history.
Wow. This deep dive is really expanding my awareness of just how widely applicable personal construct psychology really is. I mean, we've gone from the classroom to the boardroom to the global stage, and it feels like we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, we really are. And that's what makes this theory so fascinating and relevant to our lives, right? It can help us understand ourselves, but also the whole human experience.
Now, I'm curious, are there any specific techniques or tools from personal construct psychology that can be used to foster this deeper understanding and maybe even promote positive change?
Definitely. In addition to the repertory grid that we talked about earlier, there are a bunch of other powerful tools. One of my personal favorites is called laddering.
Laddering. I've never heard of that one.
Yeah.
What is it? How does it work?
So laddering is a technique that's used to explore the hierarchical structure of our constructs. It's all about asking a series of why questions to help uncover the underlying values and beliefs that are driving our choices and behaviors.
Oh, interesting. So it's kind of like peeling back the layers of an onion to get to the core of what's really motivating us.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be a super powerful tool for personal growth and development.
So can you give me an example of how laddering might be used in like a real life situation?
Sure. Imagine someone who's struggling with procrastination. Through laddering, they might start by identifying a specific task that they're avoiding. Let's say writing a report.
Okay, so they've identified the task. What happens next?
Well, the next step is to ask, why am I avoiding this task? And maybe their answer is because it feels really overwhelming.
Yeah, I can relate to that for sure. A lot of people feel that way. Where do you go from there?
You just keep asking why. So
Yeah.
why does it feel overwhelming? And they might say something like, because I'm afraid of failing.
Ah, so now we're getting to those deeper layers, right? The underlying beliefs.
Exactly. And you keep asking why until you reach that core construct, the one that's driving that procrastination. And in this case, it might be a belief like, I'm not good enough, or my work is never perfect enough.
I see. So by uncovering that core belief, then the individual can actually start to challenge it and find more constructive ways of thinking and acting.
Exactly. Laddering helps us to become more aware of those often hidden beliefs that are shaping our choices and our behaviors. And once we can bring them into our conscious awareness, we can start to question them, challenge them, and ultimately choose more empowering ways of, being in the world.
That's such a fascinating technique. And it makes me realize how much of our behavior is actually driven by unconscious beliefs and assumptions. And it really highlights the power of personal construct psychology to bring those beliefs to light and then create lasting change.
It's a powerful process for sure. And it's just one example of the many tools that personal construct psychology offers for personal transformation.
This is mind-blowing. We've covered so much ground. We started with those basic personal constructs, and we've talked about their applications in education, organizations, cross-cultural communication, even international relations.
Yeah.
And then we're just beginning to explore all those practical tools for personal growth.
And there's still so much more to uncover. In the final part of our deep dive, we can delve even further into the philosophical underpinnings of personal construct psychology and talk about its potential to help us all live more meaningful and fulfilling lives.
So we've explored, a lot of the practical applications of personal construct psychology from classrooms to like conflict resolution. But you mentioned earlier that it's also like a philosophy for living. That sounds really intriguing. What do you mean by that?
Well, personal construct psychology doesn't just offer tools for understanding behavior. It gives us a framework, a way to approach life itself.
So it's not just about analyzing like our thoughts and actions. It's about how we navigate the world, how we make choices, even how we find meaning.
Exactly. George Kelly, the founder of personal construct psychology, he believed that life is inherently uncertain. Like our constructs, our ways of making sense of things, are constantly being challenged and revised. And he saw this not as a problem, but like as this fundamental part of the human experience.
That's a really cool perspective. I mean, most of us try to avoid uncertainty, right? We try to cling to what's familiar and safe. But you're saying Kelly actually like embraced it.
He did. He believed that embracing uncertainty, like being open to new experiences and new perspectives, is what allows us to grow and evolve. It's in those moments of challenge when our constructs are really put to the test that we have the opportunity to learn and create, new meaning.
So instead of like fearing change or trying to, control every little thing, personal construct psychology is encouraging us to be more flexible, more adaptable, more open to like the unknown.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our understanding of the world is always changing. It's in flux. And that's okay, actually. It's what makes life so interesting.
This is making me think about how much I like resist change, how I just kind of hold on to my constructs even when they're not serving me anymore. It seems like personal construct psychology is kind of inviting me to let go of that rigidity, to embrace like a more fluid way of being.
It is. And, it's not just about individual growth either. Kelly also emphasized the social nature of construing. He believed that we actually create meaning in relationship with others. Our constructs aren't formed in isolation. They're formed through, like, our interactions with family, with friends, colleagues, even strangers.
So like our understanding of the world is constantly being shaped and reshaped through all our relationships.
That's right. And it highlights the importance of, like, empathy, compassion, and collaboration. By understanding other people's constructs, we can build stronger relationships, navigate those conflicts more effectively, and create more like harmonious communities.
This is really resonating with me. It kind of shifts that focus from like the individual to the collective, right? It's a reminder that we're all interconnected.
Exactly. And this kind of brings us to a fascinating aspect of personal construct psychology, the role of language.
Yeah, we've talked about language a little bit before, but I'm curious to like go a little bit deeper. So, what's its significance in shaping how we construe things?
Well, Kelly believed that language isn't just a tool for communication. It's a way of constructing reality, of shaping our perceptions and experiences. The words we use, the stories we tell ourselves, even the way we talk to ourselves internally, all of these things influence how we actually see the world.
That's super powerful. It's like we're always creating and recreating our reality through language.
Exactly. And that's why personal construct psychology, it emphasizes how important it is to be mindful of our language, to try to use it in a way that's empowering, in a way that's constructive.
So it's not just about what we say, but also how we say it. The words we choose and even the words we choose not to say.
Exactly. It's about developing a language that's flexible, open to multiple perspectives, and ultimately it's in service of our values and goals.
This makes me think about like the power of positive self-talk. How important it is to choose words that uplift us, that inspire us, rather than like limiting us or confining us.
Yeah, that's a great example. It really highlights that transformative potential of personal construct psychology.
Yeah.
It's not just like a theory to be studied, it's a toolbox for creating positive change in our lives and the world around us.
Speaking of tools, you mentioned before that there are like techniques beyond the repertory grid and laddering that people can use to apply these ideas. Could you maybe share a couple more examples?
Of course. One technique that's often used in personal construct therapy is called fixed role therapy. It basically involves creating a fictional character, one with different constructs than the client,
Mm.
and then having the client kind of try on that role, for a period of time.
So it's almost like role playing,
Yeah.
but like with a deeper purpose.
Exactly. The goal is to help the client step outside of their like habitual way of seeing things and then experiment with new perspectives, new behaviors.
Wow, that's such an innovative approach. It sounds like it could be really liberating, like you could
Yeah.
help people break free from those limiting beliefs and behaviors.
It can. And then there are other techniques that are focused on like future thinking, helping people to kind of envision the kind of life they want to create and then identifying those steps they need to take to get there.
So personal construct psychology is not just about understanding the past or even the present. It's also about empowering people to create their own future.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we all have the power to choose how we construe our experiences. And those choices, they shape the paths we take.
Wow, this has been such an incredible journey. I feel like I've learned so much, like a whole new understanding of myself and the world around me. And I'm so grateful for your expertise, in guiding me through all of this complex and fascinating theory.
Well, it's been my pleasure. And remember, this is just the beginning of your exploration. The real adventure begins when you start applying these ideas to your own life and your own experiences.
Well, I'm excited to continue exploring for sure. And for anyone listening who's intrigued by personal construct psychology, I definitely recommend checking out the full International Handbook of Personal Construct Psychology. There's so much more to discover. Until next time.